Welcome back, everyone. Today I have another video, but this time it's a different kind of video, as I am going to go to Gen Con this weekend, this week actually, and I am not gonna be able to do too many like gameplay videos and like long format videos. So I wanted to do something that I've been asked a lot to do, which is how to play against Zoro. And yeah, let's do that. I think it's gonna be helpful for everyone, as it was expected to be like a Zoro dominated format. Now, Whitebeard just won the latest tournament, so who knows what's gonna happen from now on. But at least a lot of people do want to know like how to better play against Zoro, or what are the ways that you can at least have a good chance and at least correct some of the mistakes that you might or might not be doing. And if you are Zoro players, you can also learn a little bit of how like things that you might be or might not be doing correctly. To do that, I'm gonna show the three different lists that I already made a video about, and each one plays different. And when it comes to Zoro, the first thing that you need to know is which type of version of like deck you're playing against, and that's very important to be able to identify how to play against each of them. Each Zoro list should play different, and there's several things that can allow you to find out like what are they trying to do and how are they trying to play against you specifically. So let's go first with this version of Zoro, which is more like a streamlined version where it's just like pure aggression and a lot of consistency and just aggression, and trying to beat you down as quickly as possible, right? So the first thing that you need to identify about this list is that it plays like both searchers and it plays the Dan, so it's heavily consistent on that engine, right? So they have a lot of 2Ks that they eventually going to also pump with like Magra or Makino. So the idea of this version of the deck is to go wide and then attack you for like big numbers, or at least that's how you should play it. At least like you play a creature, you play a bunch of 1-drops, and then you start attacking for big numbers rather than small numbers. It will depend on how many like how many cards they have on hand, right? If they have a low hand size, then you use your whiteboard to attack them for 5k, and that's what they're trying to do, right? They're gonna try to attack you for 5k. So in order to combat this, early on, it's fine to fight for board. Like if you have a small removal card for like the 1-drops. So the few early turns, if they're trying to establish a board of 1-drops, it's fine to just remove whatever they have, right? But the problem with this version is that eventually they're gonna overpower you. They're gonna be able to go super wide, and they're gonna be able to establish bodies to where if you are attacking the bodies, that's when you fall into a trap where you have to keep attacking the bodies, and you're never gonna be able to kill them because they're gonna be able to replace them and attack you. So eventually they're gonna win. That's what it comes down to. So what's good to do against this kind of strategy? So the best thing is having like any 7k attacker is very good against Zoro, because they have to pitch 2 cards from their hand to defend their leader, and that's basically what it comes down to. If they have to use the resources to defend their leader, then they don't have the resources to play too many cards, and then you can maybe either take control of the board, or you have to put yourself in a racing situation where, yeah, they have a lot of bodies on board, but they can only efficiently attack with like 2 or 3 of those bodies. Meaning what? Like if they're attacking you for 5, that's much easier to defend than it is like if they attack you for 7 in one creature, and if they attack you for 7 in another one, which you have to pitch 2 cards like in one attack. And then if they have to spend the whole turn attaching 2 energy to Nami, 2 energy to Iso, 2 energy to something else to attack, like it is very efficient for you to defend those. And rather than attack the board in that case, you just rather attack the leader and then force them to either have to defend them, and then if they lose the board a little bit, then they won't be able to come back. So it is very important to have like 1-drops or 2-drops, so you can slam the 1-drops and 2-drops into whatever they turn sideways and keep attacking the leader, at least in this version of the deck, because they don't have any defense. They don't have any, like the only thing that you probably play on this kind of leader is Radical Beam. Now some lists, and I think you should be playing like something like Garpoint or something else to help you a little bit more on the defense department, or because they don't play blockers at least, so you could play a blocker or something else. But it's very difficult for like this version of the deck to do that because it's just very like comprised, and they need to have answers for the mirror. They need to have all these cards that are good in the mirror, and that makes it difficult to just have all the answers in just one deck list, right? So that's basically how you play against this version of the leader. And one big tell about how, if they're playing this version of the leader, is if it start defending early on. Like if they attack you, if you attack them for 5 early on into the leader, and they defend the first card, then you can also tell, okay, so they're trying to defend the leader early on. So then you're forced to attack their board because they're going to have too much life. And then if you have to attack the board, they put you in that position where I was talking about, where they go, oh, because I have a white board, you have to keep attacking my board every turn. And that's what you want to be with Zoro. And that's what you have to try to avoid when you're playing against Zoro. That is one of the main things. And then eventually you are trying to run them out of resources, but at the same time, you're trying to, like, again, it is all a race. And especially if you add cards that have like dual attack to your deck. For example, in Smoker, you can play what's the guy? Smoker, the one that if they have a 0 cost on board, you can dual attack. That's very good against this version of the deck. In yellow, you have the dual attacker, Crocker, and then in green, you have Creek. Like there is a lot of answers for this kind of strategy, where if you put them down quickly to 1-2 life, they're not gonna be able to defend their leader. And that's the first thing I need to know, like, about this version of the deck, right? Let's go into the next one. All right, and to the second list. So what are the subtle things that you can know about this list in specific? Well, first, they're playing Nami Searcher and they're playing Boogie Searcher. So immediately, if the opponent starts off with Boogie, then you know it's not the first list that I was showing. So you already have, like, there's a different game plan mentality for Zoro players at this point to play the deck, however they're playing it, right? Because now, you know, they are playing Marco, maybe, or if they could have played Marco in the other list, but I mean, there's a lot of versions of it's still the same thing. But Marco is not as good in the first one because you cannot like pitch extra cards to save him. But regardless of the case, like Boogie makes a lot of different matchups completely different, right? Because he's a 1 energy 3k attacker that it doesn't die to slash characters, so it's much better in the mirror. So these lists are more catered to try to beat the mirror, where they have Fireface, they have Marco, they have like Gordon sometimes, they have more removal, and that's a little bit different to play against. Now they also have the 1-drops, they're whatever they always have, but they have to use those 1-drops and those extra cards more efficiently too. So it all comes down to, in this list, the biggest threat about this deck is Marco and Zoro. Why? Because Marco is a 7k attacker for not done investment, and Zoro is a 7k attacker for 1 done investment. So they're way too efficient, and it also has Rush, of course, it's really good. So they're really efficient for what they do in a Zoro deck. And the other cards are there to distract you a little bit. Like you attack for 5 maybe, you attack for 7, whatever you want to do. So the opponent attacks them, and then it gives you a little bit more time, right? And also on top of that, they also play a lot of defense because the deck allows you to do that. Boogie on itself does that by allowing you to draw more guard points or whatever the case might be. Now this is a Nami version of the deck where you can also search the guard points and all the defense of the deck by doing this. So against this version of the deck, they might actually just take the early hits because they want to see more cards. They want to have like the cards that they play, like Marco or Zoro or whatever they play. They want to have it defended better, so they don't have to necessarily take like the protect the first life. And they want to see the removal cards, the Fireface, their Gordons. They want to see all these cards so they can establish a good strategy, right? It's still the same. You're still doing like early on searchers. So again, fighting for board in this version is much better, as you're probably going to have to go through a lot of instances to go through all the defense, because they do have a lot of extra cards. And because that's the case, you cannot just blatantly just attack the leader and just go for game. And so the best strategies to deal with Zoro at this point would be to also, this is all part of the like deck building construction of your decks. You have to color your decks a little bit to beat Zoro, because I mean you have to have tappers in green to tap their one drops and attack them, and then keep them out of balance there. You have to have in red. You have to have removal. You have to have something like Gordon, Vista, or Firefist. You have to have something that you can deal with like annoying threats, and at the same time apply your own pressure in your turn, right? In yellow, we need to. The best card that yellow can do about this deck is gonna be the dual striker still. Cracker. Cracker is gonna be very important for you at all points versus Zoro. Is the most important card. Now there's a problem with Cracker. I mean, this deck does play Fire Fist, and Fire Fist or Gordon or whatever type of removal Gordon Marco is really bad for you if they get to hit you with like a Fire Fist, destroy 2 cards for free, and then you have no pressure to counterback. So that's why yellow doesn't have so much of a good matchup. If they don't have the answer for the Cracker, then you have a much better chance of actually killing them. But that's besides the point, right? You can play yellow 2 different ways. If yellow is able to dominate the early game, like with a 4-drop Karakuri, or with like establish good 6k bodies that are hard to kill, and then you're able to keep pressuring the leader, and then by the time you play like a 7-drop Big Mom or an 8-drop to heal yourself, then you're gonna be establishing good bodies. They're gonna be able to go through like Radical Beam and Guard Point, and it's gonna give you the game. It's still all about like having enough pressure to pressure the leader, and you also at some point you have to forget the board. So early on, fighting for board is really important, but then at some point they're gonna overpower you again, as I was saying. And fighting for board only if it's important to like survival one more turn. If you can give yourself one more turn, sometimes it's just good enough to win the game. But you have to give yourself enough time, or you have to analyze where to go for game. Is basically what it comes down to here. Important for this list, always try to combo like the like counter out of the 5k attackers. Those are the easier one to defense. They're gonna attack for 8, 7s, and those you can take freely, because I mean at least they committed some energy, some down investment into that, and that's gonna be gonna make things easier when they start playing Marcos and they start playing Zoros and they start attacking you for 7s. It is better that way. Now triggers do play a lot of like events into like what Zoro wants to do. Like that's something that you don't account for, but at least on yellow you're able to manipulate with that, right? Black decks want to remove pretty much everything that they do, and they want to do small creatures, and they want to have creatures that don't die by effects. Something like Smoker, something like Borsalino is really good against Zoro, because they cannot deal with that card, and eventually the dual attack on Smoker, or the not being able to be KO'd by Borsalino blocker, is just very important for this deck to be successful, right? And yeah, that's basically how, like, it also comes down into like the deck building aspect of the decks. And a lot of times you should attack with Borsalino if you're playing, like, your blockers should not only be blockers, because you need to attack with them until you need them as blockers. Is basically what it comes down to. Also, okay, and then let's go into the next list, right? All right, and this is the third list that I have for Zoro, and this is more like a mid-range version of the deck where you're still playing the one-offs, and you're still playing like the hits, which is Marco and Zoro, which are the best cards. You're also playing Teach for like the Whitebeard matchup, because if it's going to research, you do have to have some cards for that matchup. It will be really beneficial for you. And they're playing like an ESO version of the deck where you're playing like TAC, or you're playing like another type of like searchers. The one that complements these two is gonna be like your Whitebeard Pirates instead of any other searcher. You're trying to be more consistent in that end. Now this one is a little bit more removal heavy, as the minusing effects and the removal is gonna be very efficient with Unigate and Fireface and Marco and Vista. And this version, it's a lot more like, it has to be like defend it differently. Again, it's very important to defend the 5Ks early on against this list, because like if you see here, there's a lot of 8K attackers, 10K attackers. There's a lot of damage coming out of nowhere that is going to be really hard to defend unless you have blockers. Now, as a general tip in your deck building for against any Zoro deck, you should add a lot of counters that are 4K counters, because at the end of the game, that's what they're going to try to do, right? They're going to try to hit you for big numbers, or they're going to have an unblockable rush Luffy, and then you're going to have to try to bait them in to go for game with the rush Luffy if you have a blocker or something that they can. And the only way to do that is if you have a 4K counter that you can combo out of the opponent. So 4K counters are very important right now if it's a heavy Zoro meta, because you have to defend the leader. Like if they go for like a big attack and they're trying to go for game and they fail, then they give you the opportunity to actually counter kill them, right? So the smarter like Zoro players that have the advantage and are trying to just whittle down your resources until they know that they have game are the ones that are gonna be complicated. But a lot of Zoro players don't do that. A lot of Zoro players, you just try to go as quickly as possible. Like if they smell blood, they're gonna try to go for game. And sometimes, most of the times actually, if you play correctly and if you counter out of the right card, like right attacks, you're gonna be able to out combo whatever final attack they do. And in the scenario where they play correctly and they are trying to whittle down your resources, you have to put yourself in a spot where like, this is the only avenue where I win the game, where I have to deal you 1 damage here, and then survive 1 more turn, and then try to go for game. And those are the ones where you're hoping that you have enough damage to deal the last 2 or 3 damage. But then at that point, it's just you have to take it in whatever case might be the scenario where you are, right? If they're playing Whitebeard, then you have to find yourself build a wide enough board to try to combat the Whitebeard. But that's a one-off, so it's kind of hard to like tell you how to play a round of one-off, because it is what it is. Now there's a lot of blockers too that might be entering the format because of Whitebeard or whatever the case might be, or even Zoro, because at the end of all of this, blockers are actually really good, because if for any reason they have a whiteboard of like Marco or Zoro on the board established, and they want to untap with those, then being able to, at the end of all of that, put a 1K blocker and then keep up a counter is going to give you like 2 extra lives. Even if they do have the removal in the form of Vista or in the form of Fire Fist, that's 3 energy that they have to spend to deal with your 1 energy blocker or your 2 energy blocker. So that gives you a little bit of like legency and a little bit more survivability when it comes to the matchup. That's pretty much what I wanted to talk about when it comes to Zoro. It is just very important to analyze what type of deck you're playing against, and you also need to analyze like how they're playing. If they're being too overly defensive, then you can go for the board a little bit more. It's gonna be important. But if they're taking their life like it's nothing, then focusing on the leader is probably better, because they have to combo out of everything. And it is really how they play the game that you have to adapt. Also, the deck building aspect of the deck is very important. Having some answers for like having some blockers, having some 4K counters, having some early removal is good. Having some 2K counters that can combat the one drop cards that they can combat like whatever ISO they played, whatever Makino. You don't have to attack with them. You don't have to worry about like any of the 2K counters, 2K attackers for the most part, because they require a lot of like down investment to be able to attack with them. Unless they have something like Makino or Magra, they're not really that like impactful. So it is just really about that, very much. With that being said, I hope this video helped. I don't know if let me know if it was actually helpful. I do like some feedback on this video. But with that being said, that's all I have for today. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day.